It is my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, the Reverend Russ Menk. Reverend Russ Menk's family consists of his wife, married 51 years or 623 months, two 10-pound dogs, one 18-pound cat, and that's 38 pounds of love requiring either 3 arms or exquisite poise. No children. Reverend Russ grew up in Texas, spent 30 plus years in Salt Lake City, and has been in California for the past 16 years. 10 years at the UU Fellowship of Santa Cruz County, from which he retired about a year ago. Before moving to California, Reverend Russ worked for 30 years as an aerospace engineering manager in Utah. So before 38 pounds of love, one rocket scientist, for which God's gift is control theory and exquisite balance. And it was in Utah 20 years ago that he began his UU journey. His theology continues to evolve and currently emphasizes how we live in the world is determined by how we respond to the events we do not control. Now, with more control theory and a 38-pound dose of exquisite poise, welcome, Reverend Russ.
Thank you. Do you ever feel lost, confused, uncertain, disorganized, disoriented? A rhetorical question, because if you are lucky enough to grow old, you'll find your confusion about life is not unique. Everyone suffers in some form. I read this article just this week in the New York Times, and it's titled 10 Helps for Being Happy at 85 Years Old, Like Me. And it validated this universal suffering. The author's number 6 in his list of 10. Number 6, everyone is in pain. He goes on, if you didn't know this before, you know it now. People you meet casually, those you've known all your life, those ones you'll never see. Everyone's in pain. If you need an excuse for being kind, start with this. You know that pain is not just limited to the physical realm, but comes in many forms. Physical, spiritual, mental, familial, political, existential. If we look for the why of our suffering, Chinese philosophers cite that our discomfort is because we are disconnected with the Tao. Tao or Tao is sometimes translated as the way, the path, the road, sometimes doctrine, the principle. But what is Taoism in just a few words? Taoism is a Chinese philosophy and religion emphasizing living in harmony with nature and the force of the universe. The Tao is the underlying principle of our universe, the natural order of things, and the source of all existence. Taoism promotes a single natural life, non-interference with the natural course of events, and effortless action, wu wei, harmony with nature. Taoism encourages living in accordance with this natural rhythm and principles rather than trying to control and manipulate it. Steven Spielberg says he took inspiration from Taoism when he wrote the Star Wars saga. The Force, referred to in the movies, is very similar to Tao. So we can see that the Force in Star Wars movie is essentially the Tao of Taoism. That's why today's service is May the 4th be with you, in reference to the Star Wars movies. And if May the 4th be with you kind of makes you groan, here's another one for you. Tomorrow is square root day, 5/5/25. Sorry. So maybe you didn't realize that Star Wars movies are religious. Of course, everything to a minister is religious. There's this distinction in Western and Chinese approaches to life, philosophy, religion. Scholars David Hall and Robert Ames describe it this way. They say, the general character of Western thought is truth-seeking. The Chinese philosophy is way-seeking. Worth repeating. The general character of Western thought is truth-seeking. Chinese philosophy is way-seeking. This certainly describes me. Maybe you. I ask why all the time. Why is this happening? What's happening? Have you ever asked, why is this happening to me? Or maybe you've become obsessed with the articles on fact-finding after our elected officers give an interview. We are obsessed with seeking the truth, sometimes to the loss of seeing what is really happening. Our desire for certainty can distract us from understanding what the speaker's real messages are. Maybe these distractions are on purpose. If you want to distract public opinion about losing civil rights, talk about pennies, Greenland, the Panama Canal, Gulf of America, renaming holidays, $2 versus $30 for Christmas. We can be swept into a fact-finding frenzy about each red herring thrown across our path that we miss the message. Could that be on purpose? Yes, many of us are addicted to truth-seeking. But what if we try and seek harmony with our experiences in life? Rather than going down the rabbit hole of trying to pursue the scientific explanation for all of life's occurrences, could there be a way to find harmony in your life? The ultimate purpose of philosophy and religion is not to logically define life, but to help us experience it with greater balance and harmony. Again, worth repeating. The ultimate purpose of religion is not to logically define life, but to help us experience it with greater balance and harmony. In the Star Wars movies, we repeatedly hear, "May the Force be with you." You never hear, "May you know and understand the Force." You never hear, "May the Force work with you to achieve your goals and desires." May the Force be with you. No, to approach life seeking explanations for everything will not result in harmony. Are you okay not knowing? Not fully understanding? Let me break it to you gently. There's things that you're never going to know. One tiny example, what happens after you die? Recently, a close friend of mine died suddenly after a decline. Months ago, I asked him, what do you think happens after you die? And he said, I don't know. I have beliefs, but I don't know. He said he didn't know, and he was okay not knowing. Maybe he knows now. Taoism teaches to go with the natural unfolding of the universe. This includes not trying to understand why things happen. To avoid fighting against things you cannot control. Go with the flow. Wu Wei is a core concept in Taoism. Translate to non-action or effortless action. But it's not about doing nothing, but rather about aligning your actions with the natural flow of things, the Tao. Align your actions go with the flow, with your actions. It emphasizes spontaneity, going with the flow, avoiding unnecessary exertion or interference with this natural order. But Wu Wei is far less about asserting control to achieve a temporary mindset, and more about cultivating a way of life. A way of life consistently yielding to the Tao. Wu Wei contains the effort to let go of effort. From an article on Philosophy Break that I read just this week. This effort to let go of effort, this is one of the paradoxical tensions within Taoism. It requires effort to let go of effort. At first, we're quite clumsy, haphazard, but as you become more attuned, as you practice going with the natural flow, our minds quiet down. Our straining reduces. This gap between us and the actions becomes smaller and smaller until we're one, and there's no separation. It all becomes natural, spontaneous, unforced. It's like riding a bike. At first you wobble, you fall, you get up, you try it again, but sometimes you get to the point you don't even think about it. But does this mean we surrender passively to what people do? To what happens to us? Do we stop initiating action? Do we just throw up our hands and say, it's God's will? No. Taoism is not passive. Following life according to the way is not surrendering yourself to whatever happens. God's will, far from it. It's living in a manner that asks, what are you doing to bring harmony into the world? It isn't about acceptance. It is about harmony. And there's no harmony when people are suffering through no cause of their own. There's no harmony in ICE raids deporting U.S. citizens. There's no harmony in publishing people and institutions that disagree with you. These are scary times. Not sure about you. I'm scared, outraged, contemptuous of what is happening. And we have a choice with fear. We can freeze, flee, or fight. I believe our role as religious people is not to accept what is happening in our country as natural, unavoidable, beyond our control. We can act. We can act in compliance with Wu Wei, looking for the natural flow of the universe. The natural flow that yields harmony to ourselves and our society. On a societal level, too often we construct institutions that disrupt the natural rhythms. These systems are not in accordance with the Tao. I believe that we have constructed an administration that is disrupting the natural rhythms, having far-reaching negative consequences of making the world disharmonious. What we're experiencing is not the natural flow. We must not go along with what is happening, saying that we're going with the flow. Taoism and Wu Wei teach not to go with what is happening today, but it says to align your actions with the flow that results in harmony for you and for all. Knowing that to do nothing is surrender and against the Tao. What do we do? What can Taoism teach us, tell us about what to do? I'm going to give you a list, but here's a disclaimer first. For those of you who don't have the bandwidth to follow the news, those of you who are being overwhelmed with personal stuff in your life, consider which actions will result in harmony for you and those close to you, but do not feel guilty about focusing on yourself instead of the chaos of our country. Save yourself. But if you have the energy to see what is happening in our country, my interpretation of the Tao tells me this. 1, do not accept what is happening. We are not being governed in accordance with the Tao. 2, participate in non-violent actions, personally and collectively. Join a group, indivisible, 50-51. Show up for a protest. Join a group of friends, have coffee, and talk about the news. Talk about what's happening. Donate to causes that are in alignment with stopping this disruption. Read the news. Talk about it with family and friends. Number 3, something I've learned recently. Do not try and convince people with differing views that they are wrong. Doesn't work. Never has. I've given up on trying even for dialogues. Dialogues don't work if only one person is listening. 4th, last, plan for bad scenarios. Things could get much worse. Get together, plan out to do what if one of your neighbors is disappeared. This can include phone call list, aligning lawyers in your area, get a contact list and distribute it to everyone of local news agencies and elected officials. If you disappear, I hope someone will be there for you. May the force be with you. Our collective future will be determined by what we do or do not do. Amen. Blessed.